In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a perfect applique circle. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts, and in today's video I want to share how to do a perfect applique circle like you see in the center of this Dresden plate block. Now I was recently doing a video, a live actually, for Janome sewing machines, and I was sharing a different information, and one of the things I was sharing was how to create this gorgeous applique circle like you see here. Now you can see that it is finished with satin stitches, and it's a really easy technique to do. And so I'm going to share parts of that video with you, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more information before we get to the meat of the matter, as it were. So one of the really important things to do whenever you're using stitches such as this, which are really heavy, dense stitches, is you need to have some support on them. In this case, I was using some tearaway stabilizer on the back of my project here. So whether it's on the back of a project like this, or it might just be behind your fabric, like a quilt top, for example, that you're working with, you definitely want to have some stabilizer, at least 2 layers, sometimes even 3. More is better than less, right? So it gives you this really nice finish. It keeps everything laying down nice and smooth. So let's get to how to actually do this technique, and I'm going to share that video with you now. You might wonder why I'm using a square, and that's a good question. It's because I found that using a square gives me a really nice circle. Okay, no, I'm not crazy. Okay, so how does that work? Well, how it works is I'm going to use my circular sewing attachment to help me. Okay, so here's the circular sewing attachment. There are different ones depending on your machine model. Okay, this one says for easy set bobbin models, so there are different ones. Make sure you get the right one. Check with your Janome retailer to get the correct one. And when I open it up, there are 2 things in here. There's the circular sewing attachment, and there's also in this particular one a little screw. Okay, so let's get the little screw out. I keep it in its little bag so I don't lose it. All right, but there he is. So let's talk about putting this on, okay? First off, and then I'll explain what I'm going to do with it to give me that perfect circle. Okay, let's go back to the needle area. I'm going to use the same needle plate, so that's what we need to use. Okay, we are eventually going to be using some zigzag stitches, so we need to have that in there. And I'm going to take out that bobbin cover. You saw me take that out. Okay, first thing, when you're using this attachment, make sure that you have a full enough bobbin in there, because otherwise you're going to have to take it all off again to put more bobbin thread in there, a new bobbin case in there. Okay, and it just fits in there. You can see that little metal part fits right in there. Okay, and then the screw fits right over here. So it's pretty obvious how it goes on once you've taken off the bobbin case cover. And this is probably the hardest part of putting it on, is getting this in here so that it's nice and straight. There we go. And you don't strip the screw. Okay, so I'm going to put that down there, and of course you always want to tighten it up. Okay, there's lots of movement going on with this, so we tighten that up nice and tight, so it's going to be in there very securely. All right, so with this particular Notion tool, this is an optional one, okay, that you'll need to purchase, but it comes in handy and you can do so many things with it, one of which I'm going to show you today. So I moved it out. So you notice there's this little part here, okay? It slides along. I push it down. I can slide it along and set it up wherever I want. I like to have it out at the side here first and lock it in place by pushing up, okay? This black thing covers the extremely sharp and will pick you at least once when you use it, tack or pin or whatever you want to call it. It's extremely sharp. Keep this on at all times if you're not doing something with that sharp pin, okay? How many times have I cut myself with it? Oh, well, a few. So what it does is it's going to go through your sandwich, okay? And I have marked the center of my Dresden plate sandwich, okay? Really is the center of the plate of the sandwich I've created. So there is my center. And I also did that on my selvage part. I put fusible web on the back. And I'm going to take off, there we go, I can take off the paper. I don't need that. Okay, that's a lot easier, isn't it? Okay, let's fold this. Let's find our center, approximate center. So I want to have a 3 1/4 circle in the center of my Dresden plate, okay? So I cut my square here about 4.5 inches. So give yourself lots of extra room. You don't need to be skimpy with the square or anything, right? And I'm just going to grab something to mark that center again. I like to use these friction markers actually. Okay, it's going to come out for me so I can see I've got it right about there. All right, so that's going to be close enough on this one. All right, so I've got my center on here. I've got my center there. Okay, now I have to think a bit. This is the top of my project. You won't have to do this. You use regular fabric unless you have directional fabric, okay? I want to make sure this is, facing the right way, that it's not upside down when I hang it. So I'm doing that. So now I need to do two things. I need to put that pin through the center of my sandwich, and I need to put that through the center of my selvage square, all right? So at this point in time, I can now take off the black thing. It's going to go back on in a moment. And then I can first I'll take my sandwich here and get it on there. And this may take me a minute here because, first off, I'm working with a lot of cameras around me. That's the first thing. So let me get this underneath here. Move things over a bit till I get it sort of close. And this is why I lock that circular sewing attachment down so it's not moving around, because otherwise it'll move around. Okay, so there is where I need that. So I can start kind of fussing with this a little bit. You're going to see me doing a lot of work here. Oh, that's very close. So it's pretty close in. I just got to move it over a little bit more. It kind of sticks to the interfacing. I mean, it's very sharp. That's good enough. Okay, so there we go. So that is in my center area. Okay, now I need to put this on, which should be theoretically easier. Okay, than, manipulating that whole thing there. All right, so there we go. And you can see that my square is covering all those areas. Okay, it's covering all that opening there. It's definitely over more. Okay. Let's get that down. Let's get that sharp pin covered up. Oh, okay. Now, I did mention to you that I wanted to have a 3 1/4 inch circle, right? That's what we're going to do next. So I've got a seam gauge here. I want to set this up now to be at the right place to start stitching, because I'm going to stitch, and of course, the circular sewing attachment stitches a circle. Yes. So I want to set that circle up. So what I do is I knock that off. It just sits on top, just rides on top. It's not going to lock down exactly, just to let you know that. So what I need to do is, first off, I'm going to set up a straight stitch. Let's go back to my menu here. So let's get into that straight stitch. Let's get out of the decorative stitches here. Don't need those anymore. We're going to ordinary sewing mode, just a straight stitch. I still have my 80 foot in, and it's recognizing it now. Thank you. And I am now ready to do some stitching, except now I want to activate that AccuFeed Flex system, right? How do I do that? Because it's obviously not going to do that because it's not showing me the proper foot. Okay, you can hear it make a bit of a noise, right? And then you're going to go, okay, now ready to do some stitching, except I need to know where to lock my circular sewing attachment to get that circle size I want. So if I take 3 1/4 and divide it by 2, divide it in half, I get 1 5/8. Okay, trust me, I did the math already. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to measure from the pin, and I can just push that in there and it'll hit the pin, over to my needle where it's going to stitch that straight stitch. So I just move this along. Remember, I unlock, I should say, the circular sewing attachment. So I'm just putting this in here and I'm moving along until I get, okay, that's pretty darn close. At which point in time I will pick up my fabric and just push up, that locking tab. Okay, so now it's not moving around anywhere. Okay, so now it's going to stitch for me. Now, something else I like to do, and I want to make sure my foot is up, is I like to turn this. Okay, it seems weird, but I like to turn it and see, am I going to be on this? Because after I sew this circle on, I'm going to trim off the excess fabric, and then we're going to do a satin stitch, and it's going to go on both sides of that straight stitch line. I need to know I've got some extra fabric going on there. So I'm moving this over just a bit. It's still, I can just double check here, looking up and go, it's still well onto the blade. So I'm not going to have an open, this is not going to be showing at all, which is what I want to do. All right. So straight stitch going, we're just going to go along with a straight stitch, and we're going to create that circle. All right, I don't need to lock my stitches. I'm just cutting my thread there. Okay, this is just to give me a guideline, okay, for my satin stitch. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm keeping this all on, but I am unlocking my circular sewing attachment and I'm moving it out of the way. Okay, I'm moving it over here because at this point in time, I want to trim off all this excess fabric. And you can do that either with some duck-billed applique scissors, or you can also use some small embroidery scissors, which is kind of what I like to use. Let me get those out. Okay, either one will work. Okay, depends on how, how your cutting abilities work, I guess. how scared you are of cutting things. Okay, so I'm going to cut in here, and this is awkward to do this, I will admit, a little bit, but it makes sure that I'm going to get a really good, nice circle. So I'm cutting close to, whoops-a-daisy, and there we go with that. It does come off sometimes, but I want it back on before I do anything. I don't want to cut myself more. And I can move this around if I want. It's going to keep everything in place. It's just, I don't want to take it off and then have to try and get that pin back in again. But we are going to cut as close as we can without cutting through that stitching line. And I can always go back and cut more if I need to, cut in a little closer if I need to. And I've got the fusible web underneath. You notice I did not fuse it down to the background. You don't want to do that because if I did, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now, right? I wouldn't be able to cut. But after everything's all done, when the project's finished, I will just fuse it down. It just gives a little more stability to that center circle I found. Okay, almost done here. And I could be cutting closer. I'm just doing this quickly to show you. And you want to pull that, so I'm pulling this fabric up as I trim to keep it away from the bottom fabrics. This is going to be a little much, I think, there, but I can get back in and do a little bit more if I want to. Okay, so that's good enough for what I want to show you. Okay, so let's go back here. All right, so you notice that I'm moving things around. So I'm moving things around. How am I going to get this back to the right place for when I'm going to be doing what I'm going to be doing next, which is a satin stitch? Okay, how do I do that? Well, again, I'm going to be using, let me get some things here. I'm going to be using my using my foot as a guide, I should say. So we did the straight stitch, right? Now we want to switch to a satin stitch to finish off this raw edge, right? Give a nice finish. We're going to go back into sewing application mode, going back into the quilt area, back into that applique area, and now I am going to choose the M zigzag stitch, all right? Because I want my stitch to fall on both sides of that circle that I had already stitched with a straight stitch, okay? You'll see what I mean in a moment. Now, what changes do I need to make here? Well, first off, I want it to be a wider circle, bigger. So I am cranking it up. We're going to go up to 8. I want to be able to see those stitches. There we go. And I'm keeping it at 0.35. I think that works fairly well. I can adjust as I go along. Again, I would suggest you practice this first before you do anything. When you're working with a satin stitch, you want to make sure that you've got it the size you want for where you're putting it in, where you're putting it on your project, and you want to make sure that it's, everything's working quite well. I like to use my AD foot for this, and I'll explain why. Because there are different choices. You could use an F foot if you wanted to, so you could use, there's 2 different F feet that come with this machine. This is the standard F foot, and there's another one that's open here. You could use that foot, but what I found is sometimes when I'm going along with the satin stitch, if it's a little close, it can start building up under this foot, okay? And then it will stop it from moving forward. It does not, it's just flat here. It doesn't have an indent, okay? There is an applique foot that you can get, an optional purchase too. You could use that as well. But this one I found works really well with the AD foot. So now I need to make sure I'm all lined up. Remember, my circular sewing attachment is unlocked right now, and I need to line it up so that my stitches are going to fall basically, half on the right side, half on the left side of that stitch, okay? And right now it's looking like it's way over. So how do I do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I am going to use my foot again, and use part of the foot to line up along that straight stitched line. And that is this little silver part. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little silver part that kind of juts out on the right side of the foot. I'm going to line that up with the straight stitched circle. Okay, so this little bit right there with that straight stitch circle, and that should give me what I want, I believe. Okay, if I need to make a little adjustment, I will as I go along. That should work. So let's start and see. Let's get my thread this up again, get my thread back out of the way there, and let's see here. Okay, so that's where I want to be. Now I have to lock. So push up my Little tab there, it's locked into place, good. Because if I didn't do that, oh, it would be a disaster. Okay, so let's start stitching here slowly and see what's happening. It's going to lock stitches first, and then it's going to come over. There we go. Okay, so a couple things that I want to make sure it's doing. I want to make sure it's falling on the inside of that straight stitched line. I also want to make sure it's falling outside where I trimmed, okay, outside the raw edge, because I want it to finish off that raw edge. And if there's anything that's still hanging out, some of that circle is hanging out after I'm done, I can do a little bit of trimming if I need to. Okay, let's go again. So you can see it's doing a good job over here. Looks like it's doing a pretty nice job there. And the only thing I'm wanting to make sure is that nothing catches, right? I've got that stabilizer underneath. I just want to make sure it doesn't catch on anything to impede the progress. So let's finish up. All right, then I will just lock my stitches. And cut my threads. Okay, did a pretty nice job with that thread. Yes, okay, so now I can actually take this off. Okay, remove that. I'm gonna put that back on. I'm just gonna move this out of the way for now. All right, so here's how it's stitched out. Looks pretty good. So of course, once you've got your applique circle down there, you've still got that stabilizer behind it, so you'll need to take that all off, and then you'll be left with that beautiful design. Thanks for watching. In today's video, I've shared how to make that gorgeous applique circle, but you might be wondering, how do you make this Dresden plate block? Well, don't worry, I've got you covered. Check out this video next for all the important information you need to know. For more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.